Love or Legacy. Inside Princess Leonor's hidden heart. The palace looks calm from the outside. A fairy tale. A throne in waiting. A future set in stone. But inside those golden walls, something unexpected is happening. Something fragile. Something forbidden. Because while the world sees a future queen, they don't see the secret she has fought to protect. The secret that could change everything. Spain thinks it knows Princess Leonor. It doesn't. Not like this. Every royal story begins with duty. But this one begins with a choice. From the day she was born, Leonor didn't receive a childhood, she inherited a destiny. Cameras before she could walk. Protocol before she could speak. Expectations tightening around her like a crown she wasn't old enough to lift. Her parents watched her grow with pride, but also with fear, knowing the weight she would one day carry. A weight that breaks weaker hearts. A weight she learned to hide beneath a practiced smile. And yet, what no one saw was the quiet rebellion brewing inside her. The parts of herself she wasn't sure she'd ever be allowed to keep. Love, dreams, a life of her own. The story truly begins during the years when she was stepping out of childhood and into her role as Spain's future monarch. A transition no teenager should have to make while millions watch their every move. Leonor was learning to speak like a leader. Walk like a queen, think like someone who could shape a nation. But growing up in the palace meant learning to suppress the most human parts of herself. The parts that long for something simple and real. And then, unexpectedly, she felt it for the first time, love. Not the royal kind. Not arranged, not polished, not approved. A love that felt terrifying because it was hers. Private, untouched by duty. A love that whispered of a life she might never get to live. This is the heart of her conflict, a future queen discovering the one thing no crown can control. It didn't happen with fireworks or formality. It happened quietly, in those rare moments when she could be herself. Away from the press, away from protocol, away from people waiting to see the monarch she would become. He was someone who saw her not as the Princess of Asturias but simply as Leonor. Someone who listened. Someone who didn't bow. Someone who made her laugh at a time when everything in her life felt impossibly heavy. He wasn't royal. He wasn't chosen. And that was the problem. From the very start, someone in the palace noticed. A subtle change in her mood. A glance that lasted half a second too long. A softness in her voice when she spoke about him. Queen Letizia sensed it first, not because she disapproved, but because she understood. She had lived her own storm of scrutiny. She had faced the same whispers of who was worthy, who was acceptable, who was enough. A journalist who married a king is a woman who understands the power and the price of love. And Leonor, without realizing it, was standing on the edge of the same battlefield. Her father, King Felipe, remained silent at first. Not because he wasn't paying attention, but because he knew the truth no one wants to say out loud: the crown does not bend for love. And every monarch must eventually choose between a personal life and a public forever. Leonor didn't know it yet, but the quiet walls of Zarzuela Palace were beginning to shift around her. Advisors murmuring, courtiers speculating, journalists sniffing the edges of a rumor still too delicate to chase. A whisper starting to follow her through the corridors: is the future queen in love? She tried to ignore it. She tried to lose herself in her military training, her academic responsibilities, her evolving role. The world applauded her discipline, her bravery, her composure. But they never saw what she was trying to outrun: the fear that love was becoming a luxury she could not afford. Every duty she performed pulled her further from the girl she wanted to be. Every royal expectation dimmed the dream she kept locked deep inside her heart. But love, once awakened, does not simply disappear. It waits. It grows in silence. It survives on hope. And hers lived in stolen moments. Simple conversations. A shared secret smile. A connection she tried, and failed, to suppress. But nothing remains hidden in a palace. One evening, she overheard a conversation that changed everything. Advisors discussing the matter. Her name. His name. Not with gentleness. Not with understanding. But with cold, strategic calculation. Words like image, consequences, long-term risk. As if her heart were a political inconvenience. It was in that moment she understood the truth. Love, for someone like her, was a battlefield. And on that battlefield, she fought alone. Still, she didn't give up. She held on to the belief that she could somehow be both, queen and woman, leader and lover, symbol and human. But the closer she grew to her destiny, the more the palace tightened around her. Invitations replaced freedom, protocol replaced spontaneity, and meetings about her future replaced any breath of normalcy she had left. Yet her heart refused to surrender. She became more confident, stronger, more certain of who she wanted to be. And with that clarity came the hardest question she'd ever faced: could she choose love without betraying the legacy she was born to uphold? This was the battle no one prepared her for. Her parents eventually confronted her gently, Letizia with concern, Felipe with caution. They didn't forbid anything. They didn't command. They simply reminded her of the world she belonged to. The world she would one day rule. A world that demands everything and gives almost nothing in return. A world that had already begun to scrutinize every whisper about her private life. Leonor listened, but her heart ached. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't choosing between right and wrong. She was choosing between two rights. Between two futures. Between love and legacy. Nights in the palace grew quieter. He grew distant, not because he wanted to, but because the pressure around them became impossible to ignore. She could feel him pulling away, protecting her by letting her go. And that was the moment her heart broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in the silent way real heartbreak happens. Quiet, deep, unspoken. What makes her story powerful is not that she fell in love. It's that she learned what love costs when you're born into a throne. But her story doesn't end in heartbreak. It evolves. Leonor began to understand something profound. She wasn't losing herself, she was becoming stronger. Her pain didn't weaken her. It shaped her. It carved out the woman Spain would one day follow. A woman who knew sacrifice not as a concept, but as a lived truth. Her duties intensified. Her responsibilities expanded. The world watched her transform into a leader. But what they couldn't see was the quiet courage growing inside her, the courage to love, even when she had to let go. The courage to remain human, even when she was becoming a symbol. And deep down, in the hidden chambers of her heart, a quiet truth remained: love had changed her. It had made her wiser, softer, braver, more determined to rule with empathy, not just authority. The curiosity this story leaves us with isn't whether she chose love or legacy. It's something far more powerful. Did she ever truly have a choice? And if one day the world discovers that the future Queen of Spain still carries a hidden love inside her heart, the question becomes, will the crown demand she sacrifice it again? Or will she redefine what royalty means? By choosing both, the world sees her as a symbol of Spain's future. But behind the palace walls, she is something far more extraordinary. A young woman learning to balance destiny with desire, responsibility with emotion, and the weight of a crown with the whisper of her own heart. Love or legacy? Heart or throne? Duty or desire?